Today on Two Decent Blokes.
This might surprise you. I think that Hassan and us contribute to anti-trans sentiment.
Possibly.
Yes. But I think for like different reasons.
Definitely, yeah. That's not surprising.
Okay.
Okay, so this is basically a reaction to what Hassan Piker said to, to the video the two guys here, Abba and Preach, made. They had a video talking about the trans athlete that won the NCAA women's final. And so Hassan was not too happy about them. And so they had this whole back and forth. So after that, this is them, I guess.
Okay. This might surprise you. I think that Hassan and us contribute to anti-trans sentiment.
Possibly.
Yes. But I think for like different reasons.
Definitely, yeah. That's not surprising.
Okay. So I've been taking time to reflect and think about this quite a lot, because believe it or not, we don't just put out shit. We try to use our brains every now and then. Some of us just think we just wake up, do YouTube, and go back to sleep. Today's topic, the whole trans topic, is an interesting one because most people don't interact with trans folks in their lives. By most studies that I've seen, trans people account for maybe 1% or less than that of the population. So it's not like it's a huge number of people. And unlike a
1% is much
or biological sex,
1% is much higher.
The natural number.
Yeah, so around 0.2 something.
Okay.
Transness is not easily seen on somebody. Somebody can have gender dysphoria, identify as trans, and you looking at them won't know. So you may actually be interacting with a trans person and not know it, okay? So the way that the vast majority of the public interacts with transness is through the media, okay? The most polarizing, the most like extreme stuff, right? Because that's what the media does. The media is trying to get your emotions and your heartstrings going because of the fact that that's what generates views to them. So everyone's takes are on polarizing issues. And in come everyone's favorite dinner topic, right? Trans women in sports, okay? You might be wondering why trans women. It's because trans men in sports are invisible, right? They don't win anything. Kind of like the USA soccer team, okay? Fucking losers, all right? Maybe those motherfuckers transition to nation, but they don't. So this topic comes up. It's polarizing. It's super polarizing. And the people who are jumping on this topic are the most polarizing folks.
These niggas need to fix their flow. Oh my God, it's cracking all the time. They need to fix it up so it doesn't make that annoying noise. Can you hear it?
No, they say they actually leave it for that particular reason.
So annoy people?
Just to be unique.
I doubt it, but okay.
They've actually said something about that, yeah.
Possible. They're going at it from every political angle. And so I see myself, and I'm commenting on this topic that's in the news because we cover trending topic, and this one especially. But I had to ask myself, why has this one in particular, for me, not for you nearly as much, but for me, stuck around? And you know what I realized?
What'd you realize? And wait. What stuck for you?
This topic of trans women in sports.
Yeah, it really stuck with
more
you.
for me than for you.
Oh, definitely.
He wasn't listening. He wasn't listening at all. He was like, okay, back up a little bit.
So I had to think about why we cover it and how that negatively impacts. Because if everyone is just seeing the most extreme stuff and they're hearing like, well, yes, trans women should be competing in sports, and trans women, if you disagree, you're a fucking bigot. Like, that's how people are internalizing trans. That's the only perception that they have most of the time. Okay, other than watching Euphoria or some shit. So
And we,
I thought, well, go ahead.
But we had a lot of trans people comment on this shit and be like, no, I agree with what they say. So a lot of people, there's a lot of trans people that agree with what we say, but that's not what we're going to highlight. We're going to highlight extremists.
Because
not
that's
the
what makes
level
for good content.
Yeah.
There's some level-headed people who said a lot of interesting mild stuff, and we could have covered that. But we went for the fucking Adele is fatphobic and transphobic because that shit makes your eye pop out.
But it's not so much for the content because it makes it pop out. It's because there's a lot of proportion of people that actually think a certain way, and we might have to address that because we disagree on that. But yeah, content.
To me, I'll tell you why this and why that specifically sticks out to me. And this is the reason.
Go ahead.
We live in this city, which is hyper liberal.
Yes.
We live in a country that is generally leaning very left. We also work in a field in the arts that also leans left.
Super left.
Okay?
Super left.
So my entire life, I've always been surrounded.
These guys live in Canada, in Ottawa, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if it's Ottawa, but yeah, they're in Canada though.
Okay.
By the left. I've always identified in terms of like what I vote for, be it socialized healthcare, social programs for those who are in need, in terms of like taxation for people who make a certain income and keeping that high to be able to fund a lot of these stuff. I'm for a lot of these policies, right? And even socially, I'm on board with most of it. But I've also witnessed over the last maybe decade or so.
Oh man. You know, the way that he says this, it's like, okay, this is the time where you redeem me. I'm a pretty good guy. I'm a pretty decent guy.
Yeah, that's usually how it should go. You know, you are for those programs, you care for people.
Yeah.
But things are good.
It reminds me of when Rogan did it. He said, people call me, I'm far right, but I'm for this and this, these social programs, these I want to help people attitude. And they say it like, yo, guys, don't crucify me. I'm for all these good things. And whether or not it's good, it's already preempted that I'm doing this is good. But if you actually calculate the net benefits of whether or not those things are actually good, you realize that they are not at all. So, in fact, you are expressing the opposite sentiment to what you think you are expressing. But the fact that in our society you are able to just say this and it passes without scrutiny says a lot about the political environment and about the rhetoric of the left and how powerful their ideology is. To say that I'm for taxing, you know, the wealthiest people at the highest amount so that we can fund social programs, it's taken as if, yeah, of course, it's a good thing. Why would you be against that? Without even analyzing whether or not
as if increasing the tax rate will increase the tax total revenue.
Yeah, and they never get to that. Yeah,
no. Why would you get to that? Why?
So I would say, first of all, the things that he's saying is if I'm for all for the. I mean, he can be all for whatever he wants to, but those things are not necessarily good for society in general. Actually, I would go so far to say that most of the things he said are not things that should be done at any governmental level at all. If somebody wants to help someone, start your own charity. Don't use other people's money to do it.
Yeah, but you're obviously seeing things from a very different political mindset right off from the background. So,
yeah, okay.
So, let's the side that I've always identified with has engaged in a lot of weird censorship, sanctioned violence, and just overall behavior that I find extremely reprehensible. And I've told you this, it's not right-wing folks who are fucking with me nowadays. It hasn't been that for a decade more. The people who saw me at comedy shows, the people who do all this crazy stuff, are the folks who are supposedly on the same side, right?
Most of the time?
Right.
Yeah.
And you always notice this with these people, there is a complete disconnect with reality and the way they feel like the world should be. Right? That is a consistent theme. When they're telling black folks you can't talk about your experience because I, as a white woman, feel like that's racist. It's like, bitch, who you telling me what black people can or can't say?
It's traumatizing.
Like, you guys went from like
It's
fighting for niggas to try to tell niggas how to fight for themselves. That's what Hassan does oftentimes too.
No. White women went.
You're just a trans person.
You are just a trans person. Sorry, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
I've been hearing liberal white folks try to tell me I'm just a black person. You don't know. I'm like, bitch, what are you talking to?
White women went from telling us what to do to telling us what to do. That's what happened.
That's a bar. So I want you to peep this. And so in comes a lot of this like performative activism that's zero based in logic and sense, right? And then comes a trans women issue where it feels like motherfuckers are trying to convince us that the sky's orange. And if we don't agree, we're a fucking bigot. And I'm bugging. You want to get to the bathroom? Go ahead. I don't care. You want the pronouns that you want? Go ahead. I don't give a shit. You want medical care that trans women should? Go ahead. I don't care. I'm for it. I disagree with the trans women sports. Fucking bigot. Whoa. Can we slow this bitch down? Can we? And it reminds me again of everything that I've seen for the last decade. Yeah. So when I'm coming at this, I have to acknowledge my own bias and my own motivation. The motivation is like, nigga, these motherfuckers been annoying the shit out of me forever, and this topic is like the fucking Batman like.
So before they keep going away from that point, I just wanted to take it back on how they are basically experiencing the vision of the anointed right here, where the anointed or the enlightened within our population or within academia, intelligentsia, or the YouTube or any of the internet online influencers know what's better for the minority groups they're actually advocating for, better than the minorities themselves. So you say something as a minority that doesn't actually go with the narrative that they think you should be going with. They can actually tell you to shut up because they are fighting for your own good. They know better than you do for your own good.
And the word that you use is what so always use, the vision of the anointed. You realize that it's not really that they care so much about minority groups, whether they are trans or they are black people or they are immigrants or whatever they are. It's more about the fact that the idea itself makes them seem like they are on a higher moral standpoint than the rest of society. So the groups themselves are more like mascots. What actually happens to real flesh and blood human beings is not even considered. That's why they never really look at the results of the things that they advocate, or even consider the views of the actual people they actually advocate for. Like, for example, if you look in amongst the Black Americans, their sentiment on these trans issues, they are very, very conservative in amongst those issues. But when it comes to political ideology, Black Americans are lumped in together with leftists, way of thinking.
Yeah. In Gotham, everybody see that bitch. This is the one that highlights it the most. It's like, these people have lost the ability for any common sense. And so that's what's charging me when I'm coming at this discussion. Not dishonesty, because I would never lie to get my point across. I would never try to misrepresent. But I do acknowledge that I play into the polarization or the hypersensationalism of this topic. I 100% do. And that's something I need to watch for. Why? Because here's an example. Someone told me this, another streamer told me this, but he said something I thought was really smart. Shout out to Destiny. He said, if some content creator was coming out and constantly make content about how the fact, like, black people, the big problem that you guys have in your community is rap music and this and that, and like focusing on this, even though there may be some truth to the fact that some of the aspects culturally don't perpetuate the best values per se. Fuck bitches, get money. Okay. One can acknowledge that somebody hyper-focusing on that and doing 30 videos about why rap music is killing the black community may make folks look at him a little bit sideways, correct?
So Vlad TV.
You said Vlad TV?
Hold on a second here. So, you see, the incentive structure of media in general makes it such that they have to focus on things that are very dramatic. That's just the reality of it. For us to expect anything different would be to expect even ourselves to act against the incentive structures in which we already live, right? And then this example that he is giving and he's saying is very smart. to say that if somebody is hyper focused on a particular thing, I guess maybe when he is trying to say if that attention on that particular thing is maybe unwarranted, then it can look suspicious. But it's not really the hyper focus that is the problem. The problem is if it's unwarranted, if it's really unnecessary. Otherwise, you have to hyper focus on a problem if it's a real problem, regardless of which group that affects, or even regardless of the topic it is. If there is a problem, we have to focus on solving a problem, right? So it's not really about the focus, but it's the problem. Now, if, for example, rap music, if it's not really such a big deal in influencing black culture, then that can be a problem. But if it's indeed a big problem, then hyper focusing on it is not the wrong part here. I don't know if
I hear what you you're saying, and that is the occurring problem you see even in relationship topics and conversations, where if men are trying to hold women accountable about anything, in some way spending that much time talking about that particular issue gets them labeled as haters or as lashing out at women or attacking women. And it's a fallacy. It's a fallacy that I feel is mainly centered around, yes, there's a problem, but you should not prioritize much of your time tackling it.
Which is a weird thing, because
more time means
maybe you are nitpicking or something like that.
Ill tense or something.
Yeah. I get that someone who has ill intentions can nitpick on a particular thing.
How do we differentiate these two? Like someone who has ill intentions talking about the black community problem, and someone who actually has good intentions still talking about that same problem.
The same way we have to deal with any of these topics, we look at the facts. Is it true? First of all, if it is indeed not true that rap culture is that bad for black communities, if it's not true, then someone who is focusing on it, we can say maybe now this is ill-intended because you don't really have the facts on your side. But if it's indeed true, then my attention is warranted, because imagine this: your house is on fire and it's starting in the kitchen. Where do you tell the firemen to go? Or where do you rush with the buckets of water? Into the kitchen, because that's where the problem is. You don't start just putting the water everywhere in the house. You want to focus on problem areas. This is the other thing why, of course, the media focuses on extreme views, because outliers are the ones that generate interest. Nobody cares about something that is vanilla. Maybe to a fault. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that's reality. For us to talk about it as if it's this unique thing, this is the default. People like extreme things. That's why, like you said, when couples are arguing, they use the same strategy. They use the extreme. That time you showed up late. That time. So the one time I showed up late for a date becomes the problem, and the 20 times I showed up on time is never referred to.
Well, the thing is, yes, it's important to have perspective. I can understand in that particular, let's say, couple's example, to say if that particular extreme thing does happen once and you focus on that and you don't focus on the other, good things that happened regularly, then you will end up with a very bad picture. And I think it's not a sustainable. Exactly. I think it's not sustainable for any long-term relationship. But to say also now, why would you concentrate more of your time on the cancer or the problem that you think is causing the black society to not go anywhere? Is simply because we have constraints in life, and one of those constraints is resources, or at least the biggest one of them is resources, and time is one of the biggest constraints we have. 24 hours in a day, we can't distribute attention evenly onto everything. It's just not possible. So by nature of just that particular constraint, which is obviously going to be extended to almost everybody, yes, that's going to happen. So I don't know. I think it's It's part of life. But focus on problems.
You on a roll today.
I'm just saying.
Hey, today you got time.
Listen.
Yeah, you said Vlad TV. If you know, you know. And a lot of people who know Vlad TV know. Man, that dude, the amount of people he's narked on, crazy. But here's my point. So in that sense, when all I represent is that in the media, for the viewers who watch me or for the viewers who are watching the discussion unfold, all they see is the hyper-sensationalized stuff. So that's their only perception of transness. You ask most folks about trans folks, they'll be like, I don't feel like they should be competing with women. When vast majority of trans folks do not want to or don't think it's a right thing either. They don't agree with it.
But there's Twitter and there's us.
Okay.
And we're part of the problem.
So that's the accountability I and we have to take in that regards. Would you agree, or am I?
I agree.
You agree?
I agree.
Yeah.
Wait. You see, I don't even blame the media for, hyper sensationalism or something. It's their job. I mean, they're doing what they can. It's a bad thing, but they're doing what they can. That's just reality, right? But you see, responsibility should start with the person who is being influenced or whatever it is. If you are watching CNN and that's your only source of information and you just watch them and believe them and that's the end of it, that in itself is a sign that you are not a very wise person. Even if you're watching folks reading the Washington Post, the New York Times or whatever it is, if it's your only source of information and you make conclusions based on that singular source and you never look outside that.
Well, I think also you're missing this, because what they're trying to say is you listen to Fox, you hear the extreme side. You listen to CNN, you hear the extreme side. You're missing the center.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to realize that these structures already exist. You see, what they are mentioning here, that they focus on the extreme. They will focus on the extreme, what they're calling the right, and the extreme of the left, right? You realizing that when I'm watching CNN, I'm going to get, this West version of this. And when I'm watching Fox, I'm watching the West version of this. It should be a sign to you that the truth is somewhere in the middle of it. And it's now your job to investigate it, to figure out what's really the news, what's really behind this information and so on. But a lot of people don't do it.
I think you're getting down to the real problem here, that we've delegated the job of fact-finding to the news for so long that now people have to actually go and do the work, and not a lot of people are obviously willing to do so, and now we have these issues.
The real problem is that, just based on the incentive structure of corporate media, there is no reason to expect the truth from them. Like, why? Why would they? Would hope that they tell us the truth, but to expect them to do it, it's just craziness.
Yeah, they for most of these, because they do have particular audiences that want to hear certain things, it makes sense why they do financially. It also makes sense why the viewers are also not paying attention to these issues, because also, again, like we just spoke of, there's not enough time to be going around caring about every single issue. So I would say, if the news is obviously biased in some way, or they take the extreme sides, and you don't have enough time to obviously invest to figure out what's actually going on, then you need to have this in your mind that I might not have the best information on whatever particular topic I'm talking about. And therefore, my opinion needs to be one of those with a grain of salt. I don't have the entire picture.
Yeah. And you start engaging in conversation with other people with that in mind, that what I read in the New York Post might not just be entirely true. I remember I was having a discussion with one girl one time, and she was saying something about Jordan Peterson being a misogynist and stuff like that. Then I said, but where are you getting this information? Because if he is actually a misogynist, I would really like to know. And you know what she did? She sent me a link from the Washington Post, a link of an article from the Washington Post. Then said, here's the evidence. I was like, no, this is not evidence.
It's an opinion.
It's not evidence. Yeah. Evidence is you sending me a video of Peterson doing misogynistic behavior. And it at least has to be undeniably, at least to some extent,
It has to be
people agree
objective.
that this is
objective,
this is-
exactly. Beyond all
Yeah.
objective measure that, okay, even if I support him or not, I cannot look at that and find a different interpretation, which takes us to another particular
But-
issue where people are seeing the same things and also still arriving at different conclusions these days because of this polarization again.
Yeah, you see, one of the most dangerous thing is people, it's not that people believe things without evidence, but many people don't even have the conception of what is evidence. So to someone posting on Twitter is evidence that something happened. They don't even know what evidence is.
You hear most of them saying, why do you, like, I've listened to these conversations where you have Jordan Peterson or let's say Kevin Samuels. These people are people who are kind of empirical in their particular conversation style. They want to know what the evidence is for something, and they want to know the numbers and the statistics. And most of the times, most of the people that are left-leaning will kind of make fun of the fact that these people really care about numbers.
Yeah, it reminds me of what AOC say, that some people care about being factually right, correct rather than being morally correct.
Right. Like, so
what a dumbass.
Already we're starting at different perspectives here, and no wonder we get to different conclusions because we're not even looking at the same things and objectively valuing them the same thing to say, okay, this is what evidence is. This data is very important in us agreeing onto something that we are obviously in disagreement with.
Yeah, that is part where I actually would implore our education systems to focus on what is actual evidence. How do you get to a conclusion? Critical thinking. How do you analyze an issue?
Rationale and logic.
Yeah, what are the different sides to this issue and so on? But you see, now our education system is more like teachers just tell you things. And
tell you what
in Africa, it's more like they tell you things so that you can remember them to pass the exam. That's mostly African education.
That's the thing. And they teach you now more what to think versus how to think. There's a quote by Thomas Sowell that says, the problem is not that Johnny can't read. The problem is not that Johnny can't think. The problem is Johnny does not know what thinking is, and he confuses it with feeling.
Yeah, that's really, really the problem. So I don't even blame the media or CNN and so on. If somebody needs to be blamed, probably parents, if I'm being honest. Like not teaching them, because also expecting the schools run by the government to teach this to your kids, it's not going to happen. You better teach your own kids.
We outsourced everything. We are trying to find, okay, well, let the teachers teach this. Let them teach about race now, as you even hear. Let them teach about sex. Let them teach about all that. And these things were supposed to be done at least in the house. And you find most parents are are actually being surprised by what they are hearing that their children are learning. I heard Joe Rogan saying that his kid came from school, and they were talking about I think it was maybe something about race. And I have a particular friend also who told me that, their kid was basically being told about, the stuff of the ABCD community, and they're 9, and confused them.
Like critical race theory and stuff like that?
Yeah, but in this particular example, not the Joe Rogan example, this person was basically learning a lot more about sex and did not even know what that was. And the kid ended up actually going and basically typing, searching on Google what, the ABCD alphabet community words actually meant, because they didn't even know the definitions of what that was actually. Yeah. And then it got flagged up by the school system, and then the kid was called in, the parents were called in because they were wondering what the kid was looking at. And, so anyway, I think we've gone overboard, but.
Okay, we'll continue with the video, but I'm telling you right now, no kids of mine will go to a government school or to a private school that teaches all these kinds of nonsense.
Especially in America.
Now here comes the other side, okay? Because we've taken ours, and let me explain the other side. When you get on these platforms and try to convince folks that the sky is orange when it's not, and you tell them they're bigots if they disagree, and that they have internalized bigotry because they don't believe in the orange sky that you believe in, they start to look at you a little crazy, like, yo, this person considers themselves like an advocate or some kind of leader for this community or some shit. Like, what else is this motherfucker lying about? This man really just sat here and told me Fallon Fox is 1-5. I went on Google. The bitch is 5-1.
Yeah.
Pretty much undefeated.
Well,
all win by KOs. Why are you lying?
Where the trans woman fighter, is it Fallon Fox, had like 1 or 2 victories and has lost routinely, but you never hear about how much she has lost since then.
Everything that he says.
Yeah.
Everything. You should check everything that he says.
Why is he moving the goalposts? First it was trans women don't have an advantage. Now it's they don't have a sizable advantage. And now it's like, no, trans women are women, so they're what it doesn't matter. Now it's like everybody got advantages, so shut the fuck up.
You know what? I'm always surprised by the failure to take the jump that most people do. You see here, they got into something interesting. They say, if you are lying about this part, what else are you lying about?
Yep.
But you see, they never get to the jump of, but these are the same people who think nationalizing healthcare is a good idea too. Could they be wrong about that too? What other things are they wrong about?
And not just that they are wrong, but like these are things that are verifiable, and they still would come out and lie on air.
Yeah.
What about things that are not verifiable?
Yeah. And you see, now people like Abba and Preach, these are decent guys, obviously. They are very critical in their thinking. That's why they are making this video. There is some analysis and some thought into it. Like there are some things that are just undeniable, right? But even them cannot take the leap to realize like the same person who is saying something as crazy as lying about the states that can be Googled of a fighter is the same person who you are agreeing with to say all these things that he said are liberal, are good. Now you have to scrutinize if that same person agrees with me in this part. Am I wrong? What could be wrong with my analysis of that? But he never gets to that because, you see, the same thought process of I am doing good, I'm helping someone, is the same thought process that is making him lie about these stats. That, you know what, it's for a good purpose. I'm doing it so that I don't tarnish the brand of LGBTQ and so on. It's the same reason why they do all these things. There is one quote that I love, I forgot to say. They say that the first thing a person will do for their ideals is to lie.
It's like you see the goalpost and you start to look like, damn, you're funny. And by proxy, here is a cis male, okay, who is not trans, who does a poor job of advocating for trans women in sport, and unironically makes more people polarized as a result because of the fact that he's a liar.
And then benefit.
This is the nefarious part. Trans people are negatively impacted by the fact that this guy's trying to represent them. And when a trans person has come forward and said, hey, you probably shouldn't have done that debate because when you went up against a fucking TikToker and lost embarrassingly, you made trans folks look bad. And this man told them, you're just a trans person. Shut the fuck up. Imagine that you tell the people you trying to defend and represent to shut their mouth. If that isn't the biggest form of performative activism you've ever seen, I don't know what is.
Todd's relationship with the trans community is interesting. He once lost a trans-related debate, and people in his community were rightfully upset with him because they felt like he made them look bad.
My issue as a trans person is the fact that you, a guy that isn't super well versed on trans shit, brought on a known transphobe knowing he might bring up transphobic shit. You aren't exactly a vosh at trans debates. I hope that the rest of your life is as horrible as it is every single day. Okay? There you go.
This guy is a quintessential leftist. He embodies everything that those people are all about. I just want to look good. You see, they are all about things that make them special, that put them in a position where I'm helping people, I'm doing nice things for people, even if it means that in the process they are being the worst of people. Like, for example, look at how, instead of actually debating the points that this guy was making in criticizing him, he just called him names and wished death on him. That's how they respond to everything. That's why when you bring facts, they will call you a bigot, a misogynist, a sexist, whatever colorful names they can come up with. Not points, not facts, not rebuttals, but name calling, which is exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, why spend your time and your brain power actually trying to counter what someone has said when you can easily win an argument by calling them something, and then they have to try to defend themselves that they're not whatever you called them, whatever baseless accusation you've basically leveled at them. And let's just talk about this guy's beard. It's mustache, actually.
That pedophile mustache.
Oh my god, I don't know what he's doing. Okay, let's move on.
Suck my dick.
Wait, oh my goodness. He looks like the guy who would say the kind of things that he is saying.
It's just a vile human being.
I despise you. I despise you more than anything else on the planet. You are fucking cancer. You are just a trans person. Sorry, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
And that's where I hate from the deepest fiber, because I can acknowledge and despise somebody who's against me, who's racist, whatever, and I know where they stand. But the people who pretend to be allies, the people who pretend to fight for me, and then you realize, oh wait, this is just woke Twitter points so you can look good to your fucking fans and shit. Oh, those people I fucking hate. Hey. There's a deep sense of hatred in them, in me.
But you see, the people that he hates that are doing this are the same people that he, some in parts of his life, pretends to like. That's really my problem with these guys.
They can't see the crowd they're rolling with.
Yeah. That's
the crowd you're rolling with.
They can't take the leap.
No, but they kind of see it because they said something. They said most of the hate that we get, even when we have our takes, comes from lefties and not conservatives.
But you see, the things that leftists actually do that affects people on a broader scale are mandating government to have power over people's lives. And those are the things that he said initially in the beginning that he supports. Like, for example, when Rogan would go on a rant to say that I support UBIS, I support minimum wage and all these things and so on. Those things probably directly affect people's lives much more than trans issues. And the people who peddle those ideas, they do them for the same reasons that he despises. That to look good, to sound like you care for people. No, not analyzing real flesh and blood human beings being affected by this.
You did say this. You did say this. I don't want you to get in a point where you're in circles with this. But I wanted to say this though. The very same concept of calling someone a bigot and calling someone a racist, because in some way maybe they said something you think is associated with the racists or the bigots, is in itself a practice of saying you should do better as a human being. You should want to not be part of those people. You should not want to be associated with them. That's one thing, which is fine. Okay. And if you're going to go down that route, is to say, if you're saying that the people that spew hate, the people who are intolerant, particularly, which we are saying most of them right now seem to be the leftists, the people who cancel people for having different views, the people who are not willing to sit and talk and understand anyone else are mostly leftists. And those are the people that in some way you are closely aligned to. Should you not in some way also start thinking seriously about why you should continue to be associated with the same people who show hate? The same way as if anyone was to say, I'm not a racist, but they associate themselves with people who are kind of racist, in some way, would we not also look at them and be like, what are you doing here?
I'll tell you what it is now. Branding. The left is good at branding. So they have made this separation, almost this dichotomy between what is called the left and the right. So now the left, like they take the left and then the extreme left. So what they condemn is the extreme left, right? And they say we are leftists.
They rarely do.
They are they rarely even do condemn the extreme.
Because the extreme left and the extreme right, if you had to really look at who gets the brand of punishment and being looked at as bad, the right, everyone agrees those are bad people. But the extreme lefties,
that's what I'm saying. That now when people think about the right, not even the extreme right, the right, they just think of haters, like people who just hate FAD, who hate people. And then when they go to a little bit extreme, now they are calling Nazis and fascists, racists, white supremacists, and so on. And who wants to be part of that? Particularly if you're a black man, now you can't join these guys, not because of actually ideological concepts behind it, but because of branding. Now,
They want to be
I
associated
really
with
wanted
them.
to get I really wanted to get into the issue between what really is the left and what really is the right, because that's the biggest misconception. Part of the reason why I feel like these guys say that I support all these good liberal things is because they want to stay away from being labeled the right. But what's funny is when they mess up and say something like, trans men shouldn't be allowed in female sports, they get branded as the right, to show you that these leftists, they don't care about anything else other than ideology. But ideology is something missing on the other things. Now, I'll say this before we move on, right? For people who take words literally, saying that there is the left kind of automatically means they should be the right, but it's not really it. Why I say this is because if you look at the ideology of the left, right, at least it has some prehistoric definitions of what the left is. In the 18th century, it referred to people who sat on the left side of the French president in their parliament. And those people had particular views that were well known, that they were kind of opposed to monarchical government and so on. And now,
And the status quo.
yeah. Now, what is being called the right now is anything that is different from what the left is. But the right doesn't have a single ideology. It can range from people who are libertarian, traditional
Center,
conservatives, free market advocates, and so on. And these people have no single ideology, but they have particular things that are rooted in conservatism that they follow. But I'll let it roll. But you know what? One day I'm going to make an actual video about this whole topic.
All right. Till then.
For them, because I'm like, oh, you brown nosing for this. And you know what's crazy? A lot of these so-called lefties and stuff, I'm ranting today, I'm gonna go in. A lot of these lefties, they'd be like, yeah, man, we want to hear fight for black folks. You realize they don't have black friends or they don't know black people. Because you talk to some of these political streamers who are hyper left and talk about this. I'm like, you do realize that black folks are not for LGBTQ stuff. They're not for gay marriage. They're hyper conservative in terms of their social views. They're like, what? What? You didn't know this? But you realize that there's a complete disconnect between the people they're defending and themselves. Because again, it's just about the optics. And as a minority, I find it super distasteful when the plight of minorities is used with zero concern for the people who are being really impacted by this for fucking social media clicks. That's why I hated it when people posted a black square or they're like BLM, but bitch, I saw you saying racist shit about black women last week. Like, the fuck is you talking about? Okay? Like, no, I don't rock with that stuff. So when folks refuse, like, yo, why are you getting so... These are the same people who I witnessed literally cancel other black communities in my community for the most minute stuff, right? Minorities are just speaking their mind. They fucking got them rid of them.
Yeah.
And so I realized, like, oh, the enemy used to be the skinheads. Now it's these motherfuckers.
Yeah, you know,
they're the ones that are problems.
You know, betrayal don't come from the enemy.
The skinheads is referring to white supremacists.
Yeah.
But you see, they're the same people because they believe the same things.
The same things, yeah. They believe in colorism. They believe in basically separating people just right off the bat by how they look. Just basically that.
Exactly. Here's what I would say about this topic, right? Now, we think of it this way, that there is the far left, which are the actual communists, and then there is the far right, which are fascists and Nazis, right? But the notion that these are at opposite points ideologically is not true, even theoretically speaking, much less in practical terms. Like, if you really think about it, right, the similarities between totalitarian movements and liberalism on one hand, or conservatism on the other hand, there are more similarities between totalitarian agendas and those of the left than with the agendas of most conservatives. For example, among the items on the agenda of fascists in, if you think of like Italy during, just before the Second World War, or the Nazis before the Second World War, number one were like the government control of wages and hours of work. You say minimum wages and saying the companies should pay this amount of money. Number two, higher taxes for the wealthy. Number three, government would set limits on profits that companies would make. That's another form of taxation.
Censorship.
And number four, government care for the elderly. Like government should take care of the elderly and so on. That's healthcare being put in the hands of the government there. Number five, like a decrease in emphasis on the role of religion, right? And family and like personal relationships in social decision making. And the last one, the government would be taking a role in changing the nature of people. Like people, that's why they would, in their schools in Germany, they will teach kids how to be white supremacists, how the Aryan race is superior and all these things. And censorship was part of that, killing people who dissented and imprisoning journalists and stopping free speech. All these things, they were part of what we know for a fact that were in totalitarian states, in Nazis and in fascists in Italy. And these are the same things that the leftists now are doing and agree with.
They basically have different goals, but they're using the same very methods.
Same methods, exactly. Well said.
And it's the end goals justify the means.
Yeah.
Why not? And that's the funny thing, that when you look at it, you're like, this is exactly the same things you were complaining that they were doing before and you are for now. And not too sure that's progressive. That's pretty regressive.
And the other thing that they do is they realize like there are things that will undermine their ideas. Like, for example, if they say, oh, okay, I actually agree with Hitler and Mussolini, but these are very bad guys.
Yeah.
In Stalin, these are very bad guys. So instead of saying, okay, yeah, my views are the same as Hitler's views on race, that people should just be looked at based on their race, instead of agreeing, they take Hitler and put them in the far right. So now he is not part of us, but we believe the same thing as him. The mental gymnastics that is.
And you know, the crazy thing is, like, when you actually change most of the things that they say, and you let's see, because I've seen a video where they're asking kids in college what Barack Obama said in 2008. And they did not tell them who said it. Or I think they said it was Trump. Or they asked them, who do you think between these two said it? Yeah. And most kids will be like, that's easy, that's Trump. Yeah. Like, and most of the questions they were asking were very coercive, for example, in nature. Like, you know, do you believe that journalists should probably, you know, like, for example, be put in jail, or we should have some restricted access to what journalists can say, whatever, for the good of the nation or something like that. I don't really remember verbatim what they were asking, but something like that, or worded that way, that you can tell this is a coercive kind of policy or way of looking at governance. And the kids were just like, yeah, that's Trump. And all the tweets, basically, or the costs they were being asked were actually uttered by Barack Obama. He's like, wow, how do we miss that? And now, obviously, Barack Obama had certain swag, and you can't put him in the same position as Trump. But what does it say when what he says can be very coercive in nature, but we give him a pass because he's a lefty or he's the other side?
Yeah, and you see, calling the desperate groups of people that are not the left, the right, is one of the most devious things that these people have come up with. Because you see, there is this heterogeneity that of like lumping in together, like saying that, okay, whoever is on the right is the same thing, believes the same thing.
They say, you know, they want, if you're a lefty, you have to agree on pro-life. You also have to agree on abolishing the Second Amendment. You have to agree on, the reparations for Black people. And if you are not for any one of these things, then you see as being a lefty. You see as being identified as being part of that. Like, it's almost like your beliefs have to carefully align with all the party points and party talking points we have, or else you're not one of us. There's no room for nuance.
Yeah. Well, in short, you see, what the left today does is, or what their vision is in collective decision making through government, and directed towards, or at least rationalized by, the goal of reducing economic and social inequalities. And that's all their programs, all their mascots, whatever they do, is just based on, we want to put decision making in the hands of a central power, and we have to solve social inequalities and economic inequalities. Now, you see, there may be moderate or extreme versions of the vision of the left, but among those designated as the right, the difference between someone who is, let's say, a free market libertarian or a military junta, right, is not simply one of degree in pursuing a common vision, because there is no common vision amongst these people, right? Because they are very different, which is to say that much of what is defined as the right, though there may be various segments of this category, like people who advocate for free markets, right, are ill-defined. They make them seem as if, if you just disagree on one thing, now you're on the opposite end. But even if you look at the people that comprise of what they call the right, they have very different views on how the world should function.
Yeah, no, I think you have probably said it all. And what we really think about what these guys basically have said today, because I think they seem to have realized in some way that the side that they basically align with are toxic in a sense. The way they talk about issues is obviously very toxic. The way that they look at the world is very toxic, and that they believe in obviously unparalleled and just unrivaled some sort of obedience to the cause that makes you to stop being you, or that disregards the individual over the collective.
Human beings are expandable. The vision should live forever. It's more of a religion rather than an ideology. But then a religion is also an ideology in some sense. But the bottom line is, I hope that Abba and Preach and many others who consider themselves, in some way associated with the left, but not the extreme left, realize that there is no such thing as a moderate leftist. There's no such thing. You can be a moderate. You can be a moderate human. You can be someone who thinks of issues critically, but even the real leftists will not accept you if you're moderate.
Well, as they are now, yes, they will not accept you.
Yeah.
But technically, they should be able to accept you.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that, like when we're looking at political issues like that, it makes me realize that there is a lack of understanding of the basics. Naval always talks about understanding the fundamentals, the basic concepts.
First principles.
So, it's first principles. Like understanding what are the why does the media do this? Understanding that will allow you to be able to analyze their behavior much more clearly. So now we have people that are getting shocked by things that the media does. So their explanations are not based on, this is why they have to do this, but it's more like hyperbolic and is attributed to something sinister that takes you even further away from the truth.
I think you really got to something here. What we talked about this entire time is developing judgment. And because when you went Navarro African, ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest modern philosophers we have of our time, Navarro African, he talks about developing judgment, that the people you see that overreact to political issues the most, the people that you see worked up emotionally about political issues and even relational issues or most issues in life, there are people with the least amount of judgment. There are people that are not able to decipher what's going on, be able to think rationally past it, to really have seen what was probably going to happen before it happened, understand the underlying incentives as to why someone would do something, so that they don't really get worked up over why someone did something. And
even with this guy who Urban Preach was reacting to,
exactly,
I would listen to him and just say, because I get why he has to say all those things, but if you don't really get why would someone have that mindset, you get worked up, like, be a nice human being. Right?
And also sometimes you end up actually attributing whatever they are saying to malice, when sometimes it's just basically a different worldview. So understanding their worldview makes you understand why they think the way they do. To say if someone is predisposed to think the way to fix people's issues is to get the government in, then their solutions will be pro-government.
And you can predict their behavior, and also you will be less tempted to call them stupid or foolish or whatever it is, or sexist or evil.
Exactly.
Because now you can really say, okay, this is where your worldview is coming from. It's not that you are stupid, but your assumptions are the ones that are wrong. And now we can argue based on facts, based on actual substance of arguments, rather than on name calling or trying to be hateful.
And that's the thing. It's like having two people that are wearing glasses. One set of glasses is clear. One set is either maybe it's shaded, or it has some sort of shade on it. One can look at the sun and tell you the sun is very bright. One can tell you the sun is not necessarily that bright. And then the two go at it and not figure out the reason why they see the sun differently is because they are looking at it from different perspectives.
Yeah.
And then it's a whole argument the whole day about why they think the other person is saying the motivation for why someone is saying the sun is bright.
And at the same, the real argument isn't supposed to be about the sun. It's supposed to be about the glasses.
Exactly. To say, okay, why do you see? Okay, what kind of tint do you have on yours? And so, you're going to at least save yourself that trouble. And I think, in a nutshell, people knowing that there are political extremes and why those extremes are basically there and why they work like that is the judgment that we may be talking about in some way.
And it seems like that's what is lacking with Urban Preach. Like it seems like they can't really get to understand why somebody would do something like that. Like, why would they?
No, they do. They do, because they said we were adding to the polarization by picking the polarizing topics, but then they said because they get us views, right? So they understand their incentive of doing that.
Of theirs. But why somebody really believes those things? Now, I'm talking about now the ideology. I'm not talking about the incentive structure of the media or something like that. I'm talking about understanding, like, why this guy who was calling them transphobes does what he does and says the things that he says. Really, like, getting to they just think maybe it's just being someone who is hateful or who just wants clicks. He says something about clicks.
No, they
that
figured
could be
it out.
Part of it.
They figured it out because they ended up saying these are people that basically would discard the individual just to look good. Like, the actual person that they claim to be fighting for does not matter.
You're right.
But then the problem was they could not go further from there to really figure out why does that person do that. They then attributed malice because then they said we hate that person, at least in that particular, or that behavior in that particular context, and not really try to figure out why is that person doing that before we start talking about if yes, you might hate that whatever way of basically moving in the political sphere, but why is that person doing that? And I guess maybe it's for someone with a higher pay grade to deal with. I don't know if you
I think we've exhausted this one.
But so guys, let us know, do you think that this polarization is due to some of the factors we were pointing out, and that it's natural and it's been here and we need to develop better judgment to deal with it? Because one can argue technology is here, it AIDS and all that, and it's not going anywhere. So we have to figure out how to maneuver in these political conversations in today's world, which, at least judging from the trend, is going to get even more polarized as the technology even gets better. And the compounding effects of the technology also start taking precedence as life goes on. But yeah, this has been a wonderful long podcast version. Tell us if you want us to do videos of this particular structure and in length.
Or if you prefer for us to make short ones, we are able to. It's going to be hard because we talk a lot, but we can try.
Yeah, and remember to like, subscribe, comment. We are very free. We'll talk to you. And if you have any actual video content suggestions too, would greatly appreciate that. Just, as of now, just put it in the comment sections. We'll see it. We'll try to make sure we get an email and, a way to talk to people. But yeah, for today, the 2 Decent Blokes are out.
All right.